let's give a minute before we start. Hello, everyone. Should we give a minute, Prasad and Andy? Would that be okay?
Sure.
Yeah, let's give a minute and then we can start.
I hope everyone's having a nice day. It's a beautiful day here in Boston. Finally, the spring seems to be around.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
All right, I think we should start, Deepti.
Okay, all right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first of our SGE webinar series, The Sneaker Wars. I'm your host, Deepti Bhattarai, Marketing Operating Manager from GrowByData. Before we dive in, let's cover a bit of housekeeping. The webinar will last about 20 minutes with the last 5 minutes reserved for an open floor discussion. Please have your questions ready and feel free to share them once we enable the chat feature towards the end. During the presentation, we will also be sharing a quick poll, the results of which we will be discussing towards the end. If anyone encounters any issues during the webinar, hopefully that's not the case, please feel free to shoot me an email at deepti@growbydata.com, my first name at growbydata.com. All right, without further delay, let's welcome our presenters, GrowByData's Managing Partner, Prasanna Dhungel, and Vice President of Client Success, Andy Comack. Take it away, gentlemen.
Thank you so much, Deepti. Great to see everyone here, and I appreciate you sparing your morning, afternoon to join this webinar about SGE. We have been monitoring and reporting on insights on Google for years. And, over the last year, we've gotten a lot of questions around search, what's the future of search? How is SGE coming into the mix, and so on. And so in today's presentation, we are going to briefly introduce ourselves and then really laser focus on some of what we found specifically in the running shoes category. Right? Move to the next slide. So let's start out with Google CEO Sundar Pichai's note. He talks about even in the generative experience, we would give you a set of sites that support what you're saying. We're seeing that already. And says we will have a space for ads in a way that makes sense for users and particularly on commercial queries. Ads is a very interesting question that lots of folks are wondering what will happen. Right? About ourselves, we serve some of the largest agencies and brands, across different verticals. We've been around for 10 years, have 100 plus employees in Boston and Kathmandu, ISO certified, have a lot of processes, so on. And here's a mix of brands that we work with. As you can see, work with very large retailers to, large B2B sites, banks, software companies, and so on. Just kind of stepping back and describing our methodology and our technology. For years, we have been building technology to really provide insights to marketers around what's happening in some of the largest digital marketing platforms. And specifically focusing on Google, we have technology that allows us to really understand how Google has been evolving for years. And even before SGE came into the mix, we were seeing SERP, search engine results page, really vary and become very visual. In the retail space, we have actually seen Google SERP increasingly become like Amazon, the Amazon product listings page. And so we have deployed the same technology we have been mastering into the SGE world. And what you can see is this is a preview of some of the types of experiences you get in the footwear sneakers market that we will cover. And we've deployed the same technology to really uncover what exactly is Google showing, what types of elements is Google showing, who is winning, and so on. And specifically for this presentation, what we are doing is going to share insights around running shoes. And this will encompass what we found on the traditional SERP, on the traditional Google, as well as SGE, brand, non-brand. And this comes from, daily monitoring we did. Next slide. Now over to my colleague, Andy, who spent a lot of time analyzing.
Thank you. Appreciate it. This is just a preview of what we're going to dig into as we get further, but wanted to give you a little taste up front. In this new landscape of generative AI results, companies like Dick's, Nike, Adidas, traditional powerhouses who are getting a lot of blue link exposure, direct links in traditional SERP, they're losing. Amazon is losing its dominance in product visibility, and we'll show visually what we mean there. And in the content sites that are supporting SGE, they're actually getting pushed to the front above retailers and brands. And then there's a new set of publishers that are emerging even within this small keyword set. For example, men's health on traditional SERP when you're looking for running shoes related content. Men's health is not a strong player, but in SGE, we're finding it's one of the strongest. Just as a quick step back, as Prasanna said, we've been monitoring Google for a long time, and in May 2023, Google had a very ambitious announcement. You can see here on the left, all kinds of visual elements. A very splashy video came out with all of the things that people are going to be able to interact with. And they call this the Search Generative Experience, or SGE. And the current experience is really nothing like this. There are little bits of this sprinkled in, but for me, actually, it feels like I'm interfacing with something from the late 90s, early 2000s. No specific rollout announcement has been made coming out of beta, where everyone would have access to it if they have a Google account. On May 14th, coming up, their annual summit, a lot of people are thinking there'll be some major announcements about the timing there. Now, up front, we mentioned that there'd be a quick poll, and so that's going to be launched. Just take a few seconds, just quickly answer, and then as Deepti said, we'll share the results in just a few minutes or a little bit further down in the presentation. I'll just give a second for everyone to make their selection. Okay. When we talk about traditional SERP and SGE, just as a quick context, on the left, here's your traditional SERP. And a lot of users will see the prompt button to generate their AI results. And many users are also just getting that result automatically generated for them, particularly see that in mobile. At a high level in this keyword set, we're seeing SGE results available to searchers 79% of the time. 93% of the time, those results are above the traditional SERP, so push everything else down below the fold. In some cases, significantly below the fold. A lot of questions have been asked about are ads present at all? And we are seeing 5% of the time that ads, primarily product shopping ads, are being served above the SERP. And 18% of the time, when I say SERP, in this case, I mean SG. So 5% of the time, you'll see ads above the SG chat window and 18% of the time below. This will rapidly change, and that's part of why we have the engine to keep monitoring on a daily basis. One example of changing SERP is very recent. On April 15th, we stopped seeing AI results being generated for single words that were a brand. Hoka and Nike are two great examples. So up until the 15th, we were seeing AI results, and there was a different experience for users. A brand like Hoka, which has a different imprint than Nike traditionally, there's a lot more product surfaced. Whereas Nike, in this visual, I'm actually showing how local stores in Manhattan were generated as a result. And many users were seeing just a simple information AI overview that was leaning on sources like Wikipedia. This kind of experience for single brand terms could come back. When you're looking at brand extensions, then the results become richer, meaning like Hoka shoes, Nike running, etc. The primary features of the retail SGE SERP that we're looking at today, there's an AI overview, there's article carousel over to the right. There's two different ways that we're seeing products primarily displayed. One is in a carousel where you can scroll through, where we're seeing some content here where it's talking about a trending brand and it's being supported by a website that's not commercial sometimes, like Pinterest in this case. In this case, Nike is getting a direct link. These are clickable, right? These products, you can click on them and another window will come up and give you a choice of sellers, just like the traditional merchant listings, which I'll show in a minute. And then your product listing grid when you are, and actually the difference here is this would be for shorter term keywords that we're seeing. So like running shoes or shoes. So something very, not very focused by the user is giving this carousel, and that's why they're giving some information about trends. Whereas when you use a longer tail term, you're looking for running shoes for men, you're going to more often be presented with very specific products and lots of them. And then there's a follow-up prompt section below, which always appears, and we're gathering this data as well, which is great for developing content strategy. Two other quick layouts just to point out. When you're doing local searches, you're going to see a few different layouts. Sometimes it's very reminiscent of your traditional Google map, local pack, as we call it. However, we're seeing some rich results being drawn in from other sites like Yelp and other review sites. And in some cases, we're seeing still sort of what I would say is a little bit more clunky, an unordered list with a brief description of the location, but then they're surfacing images that are helping hopefully give the user some context about what they would see when they go in. In this sample, we're always seeing the AI overview and we're always seeing follow-up prompts. Articles we're seeing 90% of the time. And this is for non-branded search. We're seeing products 88% of the time. 10% of the time we see places, even if it's not a local search. If you say near me or any other local modifier, we're getting results 100% of the time. Okay, the big question. A lot of people have read about traffic is going to drop dramatically. So for those who are receiving links, who are the lucky ones? In retail SERP, primary source of links would be in this AI overview, where, as Sundar Pichai said, that results will be supported with links in context. So this is an example of how it looks in rudimentary form right now. This will evolve. And then the article carousel is another place for links. And then I pointed out that there's this little section here in retail, which gives the ability for a user to click and get to the website directly. 86% of the share of voice for links is going to publishers, content websites, review sites, etc. Retailers are only getting 9%. Social media sites like Reddit, Quora, YouTube are not being surfaced as often. There's a little bit of extra, and then brands, it's almost zero. In fact, over one short period of time where we had a sample size of 1,200 links, there were 3 links to brand sites directly. As a further sort of examination, right, we're just looking at the top 20 here and wanted to point out what's shifting. So when we talk about organic, in this case, we're talking about these traditional blue link results. It is true that users will get from people also ask and some other SERP features, and we do gather that data. But for this illustration, what we're showing here is, you look at Runner's World, they're maintaining their strength, but all these other top ones that have strong share of voice when users are looking for running shoes related words, all of these are being pushed down by publishers. And I mentioned earlier, publishers like Men's Health are surfacing Running Shoes Guru and Run Repeat, so etc. So there's a new landscape, and it'll be important to analyze that for deconstructing why somebody's winning and also looking for partnership opportunities to place content or even advertise. Okay. Beyond links, in retail SERP, products are going to be the most prevalent. And we just wanted to pause here because we do live in Boston and had the marathon recently. Prasanna, you were telling me about your experience on Marathon Day.
Yeah, Prasanna, before you do that quickly, the poll results are in. And when asked how prepared do you feel for SGE, 83% said lots to do and 17% said lost. So hopefully with this presentation, we'll provide you with more clarity. All right, Prasanna, take it away.
Thank you so much. Some of the results are very surprising to me as well. When I think about the tremendous investments brands have made over the years in terms of getting visibility on Google, the fact that, as a brand, you have like no, almost zero links, if you may, is like striking, and then we've always known that publishers have had an important role, but the importance of publishers has been amplified. And so, I mean, I wonder what that's going to do in terms of where dollars are, how that's going to move in the days ahead. Obviously, the verdict is still to be known, but that was the biggest change, which is like the amount of links that publishers are getting versus retailers. That's like way off. But to come back, I figured, we might actually lighten up the mood and talk about the marathon, and I'll tell you my story. So living in Boston, I go and cheer for the marathon with my little boys, with the little boy on my top here, and before I didn't have this experience till last year, the year before, but this year, since we've been analyzing running shoes so much to look at SGE, I've actually wondered whether Google thinks I'm a marathon runner. I'm not, but that's one. And the second is, traditionally, you go to the marathon, you cheer for all kinds of folks, and I would never be looking at shoes that much. But now, since we're analyzing shoes so much, I've actually begun to notice shoes and starting to see Hoka and Adidas and all of that, and on race day, as we were cheering, for folks from a variety of life from different parts of the world come to Boston and run the marathon, I was also looking, at what shoes do they wear, right? And what I'm wondering is, if search is the frontier of what's going to happen, our trends we're seeing around running shoes, who's really beginning to be visible, is that even going to show up in some of what we see mainstream begin to use for the marathon? So I just figured, we throw that in. But Andy, over to you.
Yeah, that's great. I notice running shoes all the time now, so it's funny. So in addition to links, so there's that concern about where am I going to lose traffic from links? The other experience that's being surfaced are products. So in this, here's a traditional SERP, and then scattered throughout as people scroll down. And earlier in the presentation, we talked about Google's been shifting to more of an Amazon look and feel with filters and this kind of a display, which this SERP feature is specifically called merchant listings. This content is typically or is primarily driven by product feeds that are sent into Google Merchant Center for product ads. There are other signals that are being drawn in, but what we're seeing in SGE is when products are being brought in, there's still elements that show us they're coming from product feeds, but there's clearly other signals. And so there is a changing landscape, even in what people are seeing there. So in that merchant listings box, as you're scrolling down a Google SERP page and you're looking, say, for running shoes, Amazon is going to be 25% of the time is what you'll see them. Nike as a seller, not just the brand shoe, but that's what we're representing here. Nike, the seller, their product feed is allowing them to get 16, 17% share of voice when people are looking. If you see, in SGE, we're seeing a much more level playing field where Amazon still comes to the front, but their advantage diminishes significantly. And other retailers and other brands are starting to move in. So in merchant listings, you don't see Brooks running, again, not the shoe, but being fed by Brooks, the company, in terms of their product feed. Now we're seeing product getting brought into SGE for Brooks, where they didn't have that exposure in merchant listings. And so this is going to be something to really focus on. We know some of the signals in merchant listings, and they include things like the performance of your ads and the quality of your feed. Now it's going to be up to all of us to start deconstructing why the signals are different and what's different. I mentioned at the beginning, we're collecting data on all the follow-up prompts and just wanted to show as a quick bonus here. Here's an example of what we would see for running shoes for men and for women. And the beauty of us monitoring this day after day after day is that we'll have data points on how these questions are shifting. And we don't have time to talk about this today, but there's a methodology to our scans, which will also incorporate when we're working directly with a client, they'll incorporate some personalized behavior in how we're collecting that. That's a topic for another day. Okay, this is a good point to pause, Q&A. We hit
Thank you,
20
Andy.
minutes
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Thank you, Andy, for the presentation. The chat feature is now open. Feel free to share your questions, and Prasanna and Andy will be happy to answer them.
Sure, thank you. Take a few seconds here. And as we wait for folks to ask their questions, here's a question that we've gotten from clients in the past, in our conversations is, how often do we see Google making changes to SGE SERP, right? And that encompasses, and so we did try to give a preview of that answer. So what we have seen is Google hasn't made as much changes as we expected. Andy laid out kind of the vision presented last year. So there haven't been a lot of changes, but that said, we are seeing Google continue to make changes. And the classic one is, like the brand term, for example, Nike was showing SGE results till mid-April, and now we're not seeing it anymore. Whereas some of the other terms still do. But the other aspect is even when a brand term is visible, the type of content that Google is showing does vary. And so you wonder, right, as a retail strategist, what type of why would a brand have more visibility within Google SGE or not? And that's for the experts to unpack. We can provide that visibility and guide, but that's kind of what we've seen.
I'll just add a couple just very quick anecdotes of things that we know Google's testing, but you don't see them as often. So for example, in some SG results, you'll see a video actually brought into the experience, not just a YouTube link. Primarily see those in like how-to type queries. For example, like how to grill. Another example would be in the automotive SERP results. We see a mix of things, including a big featured image that's sometimes drawn in from a third-party source. So let's say that the content is talking about the best EV. You might see an image that's strong image up top, but it's being brought in from cars.com because they're one of the sources for car reviews. I just wanted to point out that we do see these things. It's just that depends on the industry and the nuances of the keyword type.
Right. I'll ask a question. There's a lot of very interesting questions popping up here, and if we don't have the time, we will definitely get back. But here's a question from Aaron, which is, do you have any tips for retailers who want to create more visibility through SG? I'll start, and Andy, feel free to chime in. Right. So what we have noticed is there's two elements to answering that question. One is appearing on the paragraph section on the top. That seems to be highly dominated by the publishers. And when we've tried to unpack that answer, we've noticed that being mentioned well by some of these publications which are getting noted helps get noted. So that's one, right? So the importance of publishers, seems to be key here. The second part of the question is, if you are searching for a word like buy running shoes, right? Then you're seeing these product listings, and we have found, even this is us analyzing merchant listings, and other signals, right? So while we cannot unpack the Google algorithm, we believe that the feeds going into merchant centers as well as other signals really constitute, who has that visibility. And, any additional insights you want to add on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So Aaron, great question. And Prasanna, you mentioned that we've talked about publishers gaining more share of voice. What I've been saying to clients is that offsite SEO, or let's call it just what it is, grassroots PR, getting the word out. And since we're talking about shoes, if you're not appearing on Runner's World or Runner's Guru or Run Repeat, if you're not there and your competitors are, you will be losing that brand exposure, but also the click on the following page, right? When somebody gets to those review sites. So offsite SEO is a huge, huge thing. The other thing is it's basic SEO, but look at who's winning now and go and deconstruct their content, their link profile. One key thing would be how are those websites getting their credibility signals? Are they not just through links, but are they being cited in other ways? Large language models like Google's SGE, Gemini is what's powering it. They love authority, or they try to get authority. So I remember I was doing an analysis in the financial services industry, and some of the winners there, you went to their web pages and they had very specific statistics quoted by government sources. And so that, I believe, gave them a little bit of extra boost.
And Prasanna, in interest of time, we have maybe one question. You have time to answer one question if you want to.
Sure.
Touch
And
upon
here's the other very interesting question that is all over the news. The stock pundits, as well as experts talk about it. I think this covers retail as well as other verticals as well, right? So I mean, I'll touch on a topic and then come to this, which is we track other verticals, SERP in other verticals. And while retail is unique, some of the other categories in retail, whether it be apparel, home and decor, we see similar trends. But then some of the listing types are also visible on finance and insurance. But coming back, the question is, are you seeing ads contained in the SGE results? The billion-dollar question. And the second part of the question is, how do you expect the ad landscape to evolve? That's been a hot topic we've gotten.
Right. That's perfect. I've actually heard, or I've seen people say that they have a screenshot of ads contained within SGE. Whenever I look at those, I think the people who are doing that aren't quite understanding the concept, because what they're showing are ads above or below. If anybody on this webinar has a screenshot of an SGE result that has ads in it, please share it with us. Our understanding is that doesn't exist yet. And Google's talking about creating unique ad formats. I would expect to see something that looks going all the way back 10, 15 years to link-based ads, native links. One thing that we did hear directly from Google is that they will be bringing in video ad units, or at least that's the plan, is to bring in video ads directly in there and potentially charge on a cost per impression basis as opposed to a performance metric.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. You will receive the recording of the webinar later this week. Additionally, we will also be sharing a complimentary Forrester report in the email. If you have any questions, I know Prasanna and Andy didn't have time to go through all of them. Please do not hesitate to reach out to them directly. As you can see, they both love to talk about Google SGE a lot, so they are the right persons. All right, I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Good day.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.